BAC and who's on the BAC, and you can kind of go through the list, and folks that are on can kind of say hi if they want. So let me share that real quick. And then when I get to presenter view, all my stuff moves around, of course. I can't see all of you until I re-put you there. Okay, well, we have about 34 members on right now, looks like participant-wise. I'm still missing a couple of our chairs, so Mike or Philippe, you might have to take up the handle for your folks in the discussion portion if we don't get folks. But can everybody see my screen? Head nods, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. I will just kind of wave over people's names, and if you want to say hi, feel free to unmute and say hi, but then you can see the committee that folks are on and the agency that appointed folks. So we have Kathy and Corey.
Good evening, everyone.
We can hear you.
Caroline. Craig.
Hello.
We have Jason, who's one of our CAC co-chairs. Jean. Scott.
Hi, everyone.
Philippe.
Hello, everyone.
Kathy.
Here, thank you, Sophia.
Peggy Sue.
Hi, everyone.
Giuseppe. I don't know if he's on yet. Catherine, I saw her. We have Ken. Adam.
Good evening, everybody.
John.
Hi, everybody.
Ellis. Mira. Brett and Jennifer.
How y'all doing?
Hey, Brett. On our BAC, we have Ryan.
Good evening.
John.
Hello, everybody.
Matthew. Candace, I don't know if I saw her on yet. Sorry. Kevin, saw Kevin. We have Mike, one of our BAC co-chairs. Jennifer. We have Kenya. We have Jimmy.
Hello.
Welcome to the meeting. We have Chris. We have Tim, who's also one of our BAC co-chairs. Alex.
Hey, everyone.
Felicia.
Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Still light out, right? Lucian. Steph. Jackson. And Ian.
Hello.
Okay, I will stop sharing that. That gives everybody an idea of who is on the two committees and kind of your counterparts on the other committee. Oh, and Jason is on. We just we got a little bit started. We just we're kind of through the beginning, and if it's okay with you, I'll kick it to Sam to give us a little welcome.
Yep, sorry I'm late, everyone.
No worries.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sam O'Connell. I'm serving as the council's project lead on this and working with a really great team. I just want to say a quick thank you more than anything in terms of a welcome. We understand on a day like this, yes, clearly most folks probably have a lot of other things that they can be doing. Really just value your time on joining us. Just want to take a moment too that, you know, the March 11th announcement with the routes was definitely a milestone and really begins some of the conversations that we need to have. So we will be listening tonight. We don't want to be talking, we want to be listening, and we want to hear your feedback and your thoughts. And we've got a good number of our team members with us tonight too, to make sure that all of the lenses that we bring to this project is being focused on in terms of your comments and your thoughts about this as well. I just also, on a personal level, just also want to recognize we are doing a lot of this work with the backdrop of a lot of things going on, both locally and nationally. Obviously, with the Derek Chauvin trial, with the unfortunate incidents in Atlanta last week that a lot of our communities are dealing with, and of course, just the ongoing pandemic. So we want to give space. We want to recognize that this work, although is important, is also part of what everybody is addressing as well, and just acknowledge that for the moment. So thank you again for being with us. Do appreciate your time and your value, and we're listening. We want to learn from you as much as we can in your thoughts and as we move forward. So with that, I am going to, I'm sorry, Sophia, I guess I'm sorry. Do I just kick this back to you? I apologize.
Yes, just if our chairs want to give any words of welcome as well, then if we're ready, we can kick off the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, I will start sharing my screen for the presentation. Just kind of the agenda, we have kind of front loaded just to go through the material just so everybody can see it, and then we have most of the meeting dedicated to discussion. With that, as always, as we're going along, if there are comments, questions, anything, feel free to raise hands, put comments in chat, just kind of get the discussion rolling. So give me 1 second to share my screen. I'm the first presenter, so it's the multitasking, talking, and doing at the same time. Okay, sorry, I have to move everything around again. When I switch between views, it minimizes all the important things like your faces and chat. Everybody's seeing that okay? Yes, awesome. Okay. So for today's kind of topic, we wanted to just ground everybody a little bit in what we hope to accomplish this year. And that gives some framing of future discussions that we'll have at this committee and the depth that we can eventually get to, because right now we're still very surface level. And just kind of showing that year time frame. We'll go through, Nick will kind of go through the initial route options, and then we'll just talk. So what is 2021? The goal is at the end of the year, we will have a community supported alignment. To do that, we have to have a lot of conversations and provide a lot more information than we are tonight. So as this year rolls out, we will start to bring more plans, more engineering, more detail, more impact analysis, more things to discuss as we move through this year. And kind of in terms of overall evaluation is, we kind of had this whole getting the project ready in a sense, and now we're here, which is that we have some initial options based on kind of early screening methods and some of the project principles and early kind of work. We have a lot of refinement to do, and eventually we'll get to a point where we have everything evaluated and kind of that base level impacts and benefits laid out. After that, we still have to go through the full process of having everything environmentally cleared, designed in more detail. So with that, we're kind of here. We released the routes for further discussion, and within this year we're going to have a couple other major milestones. But when we think of this committee as a whole, is that we're going to have these reports that kind of come out in what we call the Tier 2 route evaluation. So basically a draft and a final. This is more the draft report is staff are aiming for early summer, and the final in kind of early fall. And so those will be big releases of information. But what you can expect on this committee is, as we are developing the pieces that will go into these reports, these are the things that you will be weighing in on and talking about and kind of working with us on. So it'll kind of be that lead up and then the release, but that gives an idea of kind of the overall thing. So draft report will include kind of the project criteria that we started working on, additional engineering details, preliminary station locations, and then the final will be that final recommended route release. That will also include time for comments. And then beyond that, we have to keep doing more work. We won't be ready. So this project is going really fast and really slow, and just kind of heard that right away from folks, right? It feels like there's all this information, but at the same time not that much. So it's kind of this layered process of fast and slow, all at the same time. So kind of what this all looks like in other words. So by the end of this year, we'll have kind of conceptual engineering, how the LRT fits into its environment, very preliminary, not things that you could construct a project with, but enough that you could look at a map and say, okay, I get this. This is what this would look like on this street or in this station area. We'll evaluate the impacts and benefits, and we'll select that route and identify the path moving forward. Beyond that, we'll still have many more conversations as we begin our environmental analysis, conduct municipal consent, and further our engineering within details down to landscaping and things like that comes in future years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Nick to walk through the proposed options.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Landwer, and I am the Metro Transit Engineering and Design Lead for the project, and I've been with the project for the last 6 years. So I get the opportunity to present to you what is the staff identified initial routes. So always want to have the reminder here that these are the routes that we're bringing them out right now for consideration, for discussion, to get some feedback on this, to get some input, to see from the community. This needs to be community supported. So we want to hear from the community of what looks good here, what doesn't look good here, and what if we missed anything. Let's get some input on it and have a discussion on that. So that's how we're rolling forward here with it. But these were what the staff, as we've had the initial discussions with the community, with our project partners, these initial routes are the ones that stand out based on our project principles and trying to stay as true as we can to the previous projects. So we've broken this up into 3 areas for consideration. Area 1 is area from up in Brooklyn Park, along West Broadway Avenue. Area 2 consists of that area through Crystal, and then Area 3 pretty much is a big rectangle that we've identified to do our analysis in or do our research in, and that is the area of North Minneapolis, and these will be a little bit more. This is based on the maps that you've seen before on areas for analysis, and we'll have that map at the end, but we'll walk through it by area. So Area 1 consideration is the current alignments and the stations along West Broadway and Brooklyn Park we feel can be preserved. because they're not affected by the freight rail and our inability to come to an agreement with the freight rail. So we believe that we can keep that design, that alignment, that route that we've already have at pretty much 90% design intact, and we can capitalize on the stations that we've already identified in this area. We feel that that the work there is consistent with our project principles, and the other thing as we roll through all of these considerations is we want to maintain our existing project, and by definition of that, maintain our existing termini on the south end would be Target Field Station in Minneapolis, and then Oak Grove Station up in Brooklyn Park north of 610. So can we go to the next slide, please? So this station area, again, there's 4 stations identified in there: Oak Grove Station, 93rd Avenue Station, the 85th Avenue Station, and the Brooklyn Boulevard Station. And these serve some of the major destinations in Brooklyn Park. At 85th, we have the North Hennepin Community College. We have multiple commercial areas in this, and on the north end, there's the Target campus in this area. What's not shown on the map here, so the alignment is the existing alignment. Again, that this was based on the locally preferred alignment from 2013. So it's the blue line. The stations are the blue circles with the gold inset in those. And on the north end, what's not shown on this map is we also have an operations and maintenance facility that's designed to go on the north side to house trains and to do maintenance on it. So that's area number 1. And I'll take, as we go through this, I'll go through them pretty quickly, and then we'll save some time at the end for questions and comments, and we can go back to any of these slides. So area 2, our considerations are, we want to, again, make sure that we're maintaining our project principles. We want to keep that the existing alignment as much as possible, or stay true to that alignment as much as we can. We believe that there's elements in this location that we can preserve. That would be a few stations, and we'll see that on the next map. But we had a lot of challenges in this area too of finding multiple lines, because there are geographical features in the area such as Crystal Lake and Twin Lake and the Crystal area or Crystal Airport that are pretty good size geographical barriers for trying to get an alignment through the area. So we did want to make sure that we continue to serve the major destinations in the area, including the Crystal Business District, from Bass Lake Road, the downtown Robbinsdale area, and this alignment would also give us an opportunity that we didn't have before, and this was brought up many times in the last, since we started rolling out the project, was North Memorial Campus. So a lot of people would say, how can you get this to North Memorial? Can't you build a tunnel? Can't you build a bridge to North Memorial? How can you get to North Memorial? Well, this is an opportunity now that we think we can bring North Memorial Campus into this alignment. So area 2 is the map that's showing now. The gold line was the existing the previous alignment along the BNSF right away. Shadowed in there were the stations that are shown at 63rd, Bass Lake Road in the middle, and then down at 52nd Avenue North in Robbinsdale were the stations that were on that previous alignment. So as we did our review and looked at things, County Road 81 really is the logical route alignment that we need to take a look at hard and make sure that things work in the area and it's compatible with the communities along there. So as we start at the north end, the blue alignment, the existing alignment up in Brooklyn Boulevard, comes across at around 73rd Avenue. We had a flyover bridge that went down into the freight railroad to the freight railroad before in the previous design. We would still look at a flyover bridge, but instead of going all the way across 81, we would come down likely in the middle. All our alignments here, what we're trying to do is look at grade, center running, so meaning in the middle of the road, light rail stations. So that's the most efficient and it's the most accessible to the community to have it at grade. Center running works very well with our traffic, and kind of makes it a destination instead of a barrier along the alignment. So going back up to 73rd, the black line shown on here, the County Road 81 alignment stays pretty true. It's really directly adjacent to the freight rail corridor, so it's directly adjacent to that freight rail right away. So through 63rd, we can follow that. We can maintain a station at this location. Again, this would be a center running in the center of 81 as opposed to before we had it on the west hand side. As we get down into Bass Lake or Bass Lake Road, again, we had a station there before, and we feel that that would be another great opportunity to continue, just shift that station over into the roadway alignment in that location. But as we start going south from Crystal, you can see that those alignments diverge, and the black alignment goes a few blocks over from the freight rail in Robbinsdale to the east and continues along County Road 81 through Robbinsdale. So this is an opportunity for Robbinsdale to look at, how could we site a station within that downtown area that's compatible with our previous alignment, but also works with the businesses and how the downtown Robbinsdale functions in that area. So there's a lot of work that we need to do to site stations in this location, a station or stations, and how they fit within that alignment, and how we can minimize impacts to area businesses and residents along the alignment. As we get down to the south end of this alignment, where the black, well, go back please to the one where the black meets the orange and the green, just over to the side is North Memorial Hospital. So 81 runs right along North Memorial Hospital in this location. So I think we'll jump into area 3 now. Next slide, please. So this is area 3 is probably where we have more options in this area or opportunities. And we want to make sure that as we're looking at these options, that they're consistent with our project principles, that we're minimizing residential and commercial and environmental impacts as we consider and look at options, that we want to make sure we're complementary to some of the existing metro transit ways. For instance, C line run along Penn and the soon to be built D line that will go up Emerson and Fremont Avenue. So those are some of the things that we're looking at to be complementary to existing transit ways and not compete with them or disrupt them. And then when it's appropriate, we want to make sure that we're pursuing opportunities to serve more people, getting more within the population density and areas that folks are going through here, their destinations. We also believe that this is a chance where we can serve areas with lower rates of car ownership or vehicle access and help people with mobility challenges as we're reviewing some of these alignments. So we'll pop into area 3 map, or we'll look at considerations first here. So some of the things we looked at first is we needed continuous right-of-way or a continuous alignment to get that light rail from Target Field Station down on the south end up to 81 where Lowry and West Broadway meet up by North Memorial. So what we took a look at was what are existing right-of-ways that are through this area, and how wide are they? We need to make sure that they're wide enough that we can get a light rail guideway in there and still maintain traffic of some sort through the area. So as we looked at this map, green means that there was plenty of right-of-way to work with. And as we start going down the spectrum there, the light green down to yellow and even into the orange is compatible with trying to get a light rail in an alignment. But as we start getting into that darker orange to red, that means that the right of way is really thin there, and it would be hard to get enough right of way to put light rail through the area without disruptions to the residents and the businesses in the community. So when we have additional light right away, we can also look at what the other amenities are in there, boulevards and things like that, plantings. So next slide, please. We also looked at compatible land uses. You know, we want to make sure that we're running a train where there is more density of ridership and it's taking folks to where they want to go. So this map here kind of indicates some of the more dense zoned areas within the city, and as you can see the two alignments here, the Lowry Avenue has some of the darker colors of multifamily, higher density, medium to higher density, and commercial, as well as West Broadway through this area. So this is kind of starts putting together the puzzle for our recommendation. So this is the map for Area 3, and how we've broken it down is into 2 routes that we're moving forward with the recommendation for consideration. And this is West Broadway, which is the green route, following West Broadway, and then Lowry Avenue, which is the orange route on the map. To get to either one of these routes, there's a lot of different options, a lot of connections to get that, you know, the mile between Target Field Station, between downtown Minneapolis and up to either West Broadway or to the Lowry route. So what we did was took a look at links as how we're referring to them that could get us to those locations. And what you see here is about 5 or 6 different links. These are just some of the few options or potential links, or, you know, we could use combinations of these links potentially to either reach Lowry route or West Broadway. So the green link follows along Lyndale Avenue. The blue link, this is probably a little bit better map to show how those links fit within the community, fit within coming out of Minneapolis, and how we're trying to get them within a right of way or area where they're able to be built. So the green again is Lyndale up to West Broadway Avenue. Any of these links coming from downtown, we need to cross 94. So that's something to keep in mind, how we cross there, whether it's on an existing structure or if we have to build a new structure or bridge, is how we'll refer to it. So getting back to the blue line, that comes off of Target Field Station, kind of off of our existing alignment we had before for the blue line, where we came off Target Field Station down at grade at that 6th, 7th Avenue intersection, and before we went straight down Olson Memorial. In this case, we would take that turn northerly up 7th Street, and in this case shows it following crossing 94 and then following the 94 right away along the west side up to West Broadway. The pink route is another option. It's a little bit more outside the box and requires a lot more structure coming off it, but this would come off the structure at Target Field Station, and we show it weaving through the existing Haywood, Metro Transit Haywood campus, again at a structure that would come over to that 4th, 5th Street ramp area. There's some right-of-way in that area that we feel could be used, and to either bring it along the right-of-way, crossing 94, and meet up with the green or blue in this scenario, or we could come down to grade at 10th Avenue, make the turn on 10th over to Washington, and that would be the red link. The red link follows the rest of the way up Washington and has the opportunity to either cross cross 94 to West Broadway, or to continue up Washington to Lowry Avenue.
Hey, Nick, and just wanted you to be aware of a question in the chat, and I think you're speaking to some of it, but just how this could affect bus routes and changes to stops at some of these locations.
Yeah, what we'll do is, as we go through design, we do work with Metro Transit service planning to see, you know, first we need to figure out alignment that makes sense, is compatible with our project principles, and then as we get through the alignments, we would work with service planning to determine, you know, where the best places are for those connections, and, you know, if there's stops that are along the alignment for buses, existing buses, we determine if that bus route would remain, and if we could keep those stations, or, you know, if the bus route would make more sense to move to a different location. So those, as we get into design and work forward, we work closely with service planning to coordinate that work. Any other questions, or we can continue to pick these up at the end, but we'll get in a little bit more about why, there's a lot of questions. How come you haven't considered some other routes? Why are you ignoring this? So some of the routes we haven't recommended are Penn, Emerson, and Fremont. As I brought up before, they didn't complement the existing planned Metro Transit ways, because there is the C line that's going up Penn right now, and that's working very well, and it's a good transit way, as well as the Emerson Fremont that's going to go under construction now, that BRT. Also, both of these roadways had very narrow right of way, and the thought was that the residential character of those neighborhoods would be affected heavily by trying to get a light rail guideway up those.
And Nick, just another question in chat real quick is kind of as we start to approach putting these lines into real things, kind of what's our process or metrics that we use to determine what type of structures, or if structures, how you get to structures, right, are used for the alignment, kind of your at grade versus bridges versus, whatnot. Talk a little bit about the process there.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Again, I think what we're considering are the first round is the what we feel is the best operation is a center running at grade light rail. That way that it's more accessible to the community. The stations are easier to get to. You're not having to go up or down stairs or elevators, so that's one of the thoughts going through there. Obviously, as we cross like 94, there's going to be a structure in that location. The current structures probably don't meet the needs that we need for just to carry the load of a light rail. So we'd have to look at those existing bridges either at West Broadway or at 7th or even as Lyndale crosses there, that if they were structurally sound, we probably have to at least rebuild the portion that the light rail will go on, or in the case if that just really didn't work to use the existing structures, we'd build a new bridge through there. But how we evaluate it would be is if we're trying to go up and over something, then we would look at structures, or if we just physically couldn't get that footprint within the right of way we have, then we'd also consider some sort of structure.
And to answer another question in chat, some of these routes, these links overlap each other. So,
Yeah.
For example, the red route, attaches to the pink route, or, some variation in that. So just
Yeah. So they do overlap each other. So these are links, as we call it. And like I said at the beginning, there might be one link. You could say follow the red link, and that could start at Target Field Station, following the pink alignment till we got to 10th, and then continue north up to Lowry or to West Broadway in that location. But there's these again are just a few that really stand out for us that could be viable options. But there could be combinations of any of those that we could work with to make work. Another route option that's been brought up to say, okay, you're considering what Lyndale Avenue from 94 up to West Broadway in that segment. And we felt that segment is although it's residential, there's not access for driveways. There's a couple roads that cross there, but for the most part, the residential backs up to that portion of Lyndale, and so we feel that we could get a light rail or design a light rail through there with minimal impacts. But as we start going north of West Broadway, it becomes a lot more residential. The houses are fronting Lyndale Avenue through here, and there is a very limited right of way in this location. So to maintain the existing parking that's there, to keep the character of the homes and keep traffic on there, it becomes very, very crowded in this area. So we feel there'd be significant impacts to the residential homes in this area. Another route that was on the map for consideration for right of way and kind of followed portions of the old alignment was along 55. So following, it's shown on green here, also Memorial Highway, and then the thought was, well, could we get over to Highway 100 and then continue north on there? But one of the reasons we didn't recommend that is because it really didn't serve as many destinations or riders. It really felt like we were starting to skirt the ridership and the community and the folks we'd want to serve here. And then it's a much longer route that we feel that could significantly increase the travel times of the train. And with trains, travel times are very important for ridership, to make it convenient and quick and easy for people to get on and off and get to where they're going. And it really did start to get away from, one of our principles of trying to maintain the existing alignment as much as we could. This really starts diverting a long ways away from that previous alignment and from who we were trying to serve before. And we did reach out to project partners, and some of the feedback that we're getting on that there's really just not that support for this alignment. I think the sentiment is the same thing. It doesn't serve the same community and same ridership, the same opportunities as if we kept with the West Broadway and Lowry routes.
It was still an important one to look at, obviously, because of our partners that have been working with us in the former alignment on 55. So to take it away from Nick for a sec, we'll really I'll get through just a couple quick engagement things, and then we'll get to discussion. Just real quick, a question in chat for Nick was, how was the BNSF alignment a better option than Olson, considering the reasons for not recommending Olson?
Well, I think before we were going down Olson before with the previous alignment from downtown, and then at Theodore Wirth we made the turn up the BNSF alignment, and that's how we got north. And so then we were able to, from that location, serve a good portion of we had Golden Valley in there. Some of the radius of the stations there served that North Minneapolis neighborhoods with the service area. But as we start moving away and getting farther away from 100, we start moving away from North Minneapolis and start pulling away from some of even our destinations in the north, like Robbinsdale. Hopefully that answers that question.
We can get back to it if we need to, I guess, in discussion. There we go. Okay. So what are we looking for right now? And I know, and I've already talked to a few of you that I know have had discussions of kind of what we're even putting on the table and have ideas, and that's a part of the process right now too. So validate if we have everything on the table that should be on the table. If we're missing anything, if it seems right, what we need to, what do folks want to see advanced? Kind of those immediate issues that people see, as well as the opportunities. And we'll have more discussion too about the goals and objectives that'll help us evaluate these options. Really quick, we'll have ongoing community engagement and communications to really kind of get these options out into the world. And thanks to everybody on the committee that has actually started to help with some of that already. We have radio and newspaper kind of going out. We'll do ongoing social media efforts. I know some of you have posted on your social media. We greatly appreciate that amplification, and we will get more into some of there's overlap on this committee between our community consultants that were hired by the county to help further this work. So that also kind of gets us out in the world. I know many of you engage with a lot of your community members and just want to make sure that you can access tools if you need them. And the project website basically has more or less what you might want to direct people to. Our interactive map is there. We've had a few hundred comments posted already from desired station locations to specific items that folks want more information about. If you ever need say, for example, you want this committee's presentation, everything is posted as well as our contact information. And the link to the survey is also on our website if you're trying to find it. And again, that's open through the 30th. We've gotten close to, I think, 500 responses so far. And I think we really need to hear more from the community and get deeper into the community from that. And folks are hearing feedback, so those that can mute themselves, that might help so I'm not echoing. Thank you for the reminder. So there's the ability to leave, comments, obviously reach out to me specifically. And I know a bunch of you have expressed interest in having events, whether that's like a block party thing or just something that you're involved in and wanting us to attend. So please feel free to reach out and invite us to those. We do like to go, some of the smaller group discussions are really awesome to kind of get into these things. So with that, last thing is just, we have a couple kind of corridor wide events for people to come and attend and hear and talk, a lot of time for feedback. So multiple paths forward in terms of, we're talking directly with all of you tonight and in future meetings, but just kind of amplifying that, how to give feedback. With these upcoming meetings, we're happy to come to anything that you have on your docket and would like project staff to participate in. And then just, or whether it's an email to me or a survey, we really hope to hear from folks. So with that, I will turn it over to Jason to kind of help us lead our committee discussion. And Jason, I think you should be able to see when people raise their hands. Let me know if there's any issues with that. But if people raise their hands, you pop to the top, and of course we can monitor the chat.
Okay. Thanks, Sophia. And again, I apologize, everyone, that I was a little bit late. So I can see that Peggy Sue has her hand raised. So I think maybe that is the first one to maybe have a comment if we want to go there.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. And if you are looking for how to raise your hand, you just hit reactions and then you can raise your hand. So I'll lower my hand. Yeah, I think I have some questions just on routing on the orange portion of Lowry. Obviously, I think there's like a lot to unpack here, right? Between going West Broadway or not, going Lowry or not. For me, it feels like a really heavy lift to get people over 94 to anything that happens on Washington Ave. But I also am future minded to know that if things actually start to develop with Upper Harbor Terminal, there's a lot of potential for, to me, that just seems like a huge opportunity for transit. So I'm just wondering, I feel like that conversation got a little bit bypassed, that Washington Avenue route, you're literally on the other side of 94, and that feels really far from north. So I'd love if Mr. Landwer could talk a little bit about what that looks like or why that was selected.
I think one of the reasons that's a good question. And one of the reasons we looked at Washington Avenue is because there was right of way that goes up there. We could also look at following 94 right away, but then as you start getting in towards the highway right away, you're really pulling yourself away from the community, from the population, and making it less accessible. So Washington Avenue right now is fairly industrial, but it does have a right of way, and gives us that opportunity to get up to Lowry. So a few factors go into that. It's not heavy residential in that area. That's for sure.
I would add to that. Oh, sorry. I would add to that as we've gotten a lot of questions about, why not blue to green to, something safer along Lyndale. So that's why we kind of included that slide a little bit, because we don't want to when we say we don't recommend something, it doesn't mean that we're fully taking it off the table at this point. It just in our preliminary review, we just have already identified that it would probably be very impactful.
And so just going back to Upper Harbor Terminal development, is that something that in this process that conversations happening with the city of Minneapolis, or is it just like, if they both happen, great, and if neither happens, bummer? Like, what's the conversation with that?
I could say that we're not looking at Upper Harbor Terminal, or we haven't had that discussion or deep discussions that would be a destination. That's not what we're looking at. We're looking at more of alignment that continues or stays as close as we could to our previous alignment. So that starts pulling us away from that, and that's why as staff we haven't recommended it. We want to try to stay true to that existing or the previous project as best as possible. So I think there was another question too about did we consider
in presenting some of the orange, Upper Harbor is just kind of just off the map a little bit, and so obviously we've heard from folks as wanting to be a potential connection, but kind of I would say the orange wasn't driven necessarily by that connection. It would just be a potential opportunity should that option go forward. But extending anything further north to purposely connect didn't seem to make sense.
Okay, well, that kind of answers my questions. I just feel like that's a missed opportunity to not be thinking about those adjacent land uses. Like, that's a lot of people, especially if you look at the draft plans for Upper Harbor Terminal. And there's also just so much parking that the city of Minneapolis is proposing at Upper Harbor. So if that's something that is like realistically being looked at as the Lowry route, I do think it is beneficial to at least be thinking about how that ties in, because I don't know, I just have concerns about how much use that Washington Ave route gets with mostly industrial.
Sophia, this is Dan. The other thing I want to mention that follows along a little bit about what Peggy Sue is saying is that we're also following and learning about Minneapolis Met Council and MnDOT analysis of what a potential I-94 BRT project might be that comes down from the 252 area. And while we certainly know that C line is actually in place and B line is ready to get to construction, the 94 BRT line is another possible transit piece that we want to complement, not overlap. And so as that develops, we're kind of paying attention to that as well.
All right, I think Peggy Sue, you're good to move on, or?
Oh, I'm so good. Thank you so much for entertaining my question.
Yeah, no problem. Scott Brewer.
Yes, thanks. Probably a question for Sophia, and it's more of a process question than just feedback on these particular routes. Thanks for this, by the way. It's great information. I'm kind of looking forward to the next few months and really kind of how we do the work as a group and what we can expect and how the project team kind of supports us in that. And so we've talked about equity and displacement and impact and all those types of things. And so without kind of giving away the punchline for the next few months, could you just kind of let us know with a couple of sentences, how does the project team help us do that analysis? Because obviously, we want it to be thoughtful. We want it to be data-driven, the right people at the right conversations, all those type of things. All of us will have strong opinions about these routes, but how do you see us getting the work done? And does the project team have kind of a framework that you come in and say, this is how we've done this in the past, this is what we recommend, this is what the next few months look like? Does that make sense?
Sure. So to start kind of that, there is kind of the whole discussion of the rails themselves, right, and how we kind of move forward with that. And I think you also teed us up for all the conversations about kind of supporting communities in place. Particularly, we've heard concerns about displacement and really wanting to bring tools forward about anti-displacement efforts. And so our April meeting will shift away a little bit from the rails themselves and focus the conversation on some of those broader topics. As we move forward, we'll have meetings that are very much focused on, our engineering and analysis, and then further conversations that focus on maximizing the full benefit of LRT. And every community has different kind of focus areas to kind of dive into. We have on the call today, I believe, we're supported also by Hennepin County Community Works, and they'll have some parallel processes as well that start really kind of setting up some of the things that help support those efforts as well. So that those will be kind of parallel conversations throughout the next year, we hope. And just like we're teeing up today, in a sense, to kind of begin that conversation and start to find solutions, that's what we would hope to do with some of those other issues as well. And then in terms of the kind of what you'll see at this committee month to month, I wouldn't say that we have an exact forecast. Well, exactly at this month we'll bring this. Exactly at this month we'll bring this. But we'll start to bring some more specific engineering details. Kind of what these routes look like in the world to start answering some of those questions. We'll start to talk more about the evaluation criteria to help. And so if you think of us getting to kind of that draft report and some of those pieces that will feed that, kind of those inputs start to come to this committee, and then report happens and we kind of continue to talk about it. So I hope that kind of frames it up a little bit. Dan or Sam, Nick, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Well, thanks, Sophia. No, I think you covered it nicely. We do need to work a little bit within the project management team to kind of bring that forward. But initially, as we're getting this feedback, we understand folks are like, what's the next step, right? How do we move forward in the next step? And that is something that after April, we'll be able to get in a little bit more. And as Sophia talked about, really how do we use our principles that have been adopted by the Corridor Management Committee to help us begin to decipher and kind of make some decisions here, as well as the project goals, so that we do see partnering really nicely with some of the additional engineering work. So it's coming. We can commit to that and let you know how that will all come together, so everybody's prepared to really give some good feedback when we are presenting that.
And I'll also pitch too, is as we go kind of through the year, this year is kind of, I would say, the biggest decision that we have to make in terms of actually selecting a route. And then there'll be a lot of we're kind of talking broad, but we'll also start to get much more specific. So like a specific intersection or a specific part of the roadway and whatnot. So there's kind of like that big, and then there's the small, and we'll do both.
Thank you.
So I actually, Scott's question made me think of that from a different angle. Not just like how we get feedback about what's going on and what action we're taking so that we can give information to the people that we're working with. But I'm also kind of wondering, is there a playbook, or is there a way that you have recommendations as far as how we hold meetings in our communities? What's the best practice on getting feedback from the community so that you can have it as actionable information?
Sure. And I'll actually go back to, I guess I don't need to go back to the slide. And let me know if I should just take down the presentation, if it's helpful or not. But, engagement's ongoing, but we don't want to overly kind of tax folks. We want everybody to have the most relevant information. And so that's why we've kind of set up these year into kind of almost 3 chunk phases, which is this initial route identification, draft report, and then final report. And what that does is it gives community enough time to actually, get the most relevant information. So like for all the folks on the call today, we're going to kind of trickle with information as well. So there'll be these big releases of information, but we'll trickle with it. In terms of, kind of going out into the broader world really deeply, we want to have time to do all the, we still have to, inform people and get feedback on these, even what we're talking about today, right? It's very new to the world. So when you start to think about kind of the framework where we can really tap into your expertise to reach your communities, is that there's, right now we're in kind of like end of April, getting things kind of together before that, and then there'll be like 2 other big things that we really want to coalesce around. And to kind of to further that, you all are experts in your communities and have connections that as a project team, even if we know the folks, it's not the same kind of connections. So Jason, I'll give the group the rest of the example, right? Robbinsdale CAC members, thought it'd be good to have a listening session that's focused on Robbinsdale residents, and that's something, that the project office can support. And others, if they're interested, we'd be, very willing to do something similar. So it's kind of twofold. It's getting folks or threefold, getting folks to the information, kind of thinking about where you might want to do something with us to kind of get through these phases, and what the project team can support those efforts. Jason, does that get to what you were trying to?
Yeah. So as it stands right now, it's like us interacting with our community is the best way we think suits our community, and then we can lean on the project team as things come up. So like, for example, we want to do a listening session and something that involves just the Robbinsdale community. If you have a different idea for your community, that might work as well, and just to work with the project team and you to facilitate that. But there's not like a specific, here's the guide on like step 1 is this meeting, step 2 is a different type of.
No, I would say the project team gives kind of the framework for the year and the information that we know we'll have ready when, and then we're open to the best ways to have these conversations.
And
So I will just say to the whole group, I know this is a joint CAC BAC meeting, but just for the for the whole group, I think there are some ideas that we're working on, and I feel like if you want to communicate that to me and Philippe, just to like make sure we're sharing information on, hey, we did this kind of a thing and it got a great response, or whatever it is, make sure we keep those channels open. I'm happy to help facilitate that.
Sophia, I think it should, Jason, I want to make sure I mention that. I think that it's worth noting that partly also supporting the project is our community engagement cohort, which is made up of numerous community organizations, and we will certainly look to them to help guide us with ideas and ways to interact with community. And so we'll bring some of your suggestions to that cohort. We'll bring some of that cohort suggestions to you guys, and so we'll kind of, the project office will help to, kind of support that discussion, so that I can see, especially if we loosen up a little bit in terms of being able to get together in person. Certainly some things in the field, out with our feet on the ground in various spots along the various route options and alignment, in order to actually see and look at things, maybe to get together and roll out some maps and do some networking to tour some of the central corridor pieces has always been helpful, to take a look at what an in-street station looks like in some spots, street running LRT in some pieces. So I see Felicia just put the chat. There are many along the line, many of our organizations that are in the community engagement cohort, and we'll hope to expand some of those ideas.
That's a great point, Dan, and thank you for commenting, Felicia. I think, that we do have community groups and resources to utilize and work together with. I think we'll go to Mike. Has his hand raised next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking my question. So dovetailing a little bit on to what Scott was saying, I understand that there's a very typical rationale of working on this in a linear way. You're starting big, as Sophia said, move down to specifics, and then move down to a final project plan. A lot of times when you get to the final project plan, a lot of times you have to go back and you have to reassess whether closing a specific road is the right thing, particularly in area 3 where you have 3, 4, 5, 6 different options. Ultimately, what's going to impact the businesses most is what roads are going to be closed and what the transition piece is going to be and what that's going to look like. So looking at the business standpoint, we need to really look at how long this is going to take, who's going to be displaced, who's going to be replaced, and who's going to be put back, and how that's going to work. And I think that's the number one questions I'm getting from the business side is, how is this going to impact me? How and when am I going to know? And when am I going to be able to come and speak my mind on a particular topic? So maybe you can elaborate that on a little bit, Sophia.
Sure, and Dan or Nick can also jump in terms of the engineering. I mean, I think having some idea of kind of how things could fit is something that we'll get to fairly soon. Dan, I see you're on mute, so I'll just turn it to you.
Well, I guess my follow-up was, are you thinking more about impacts that are permanent, impacts that are during construction time frame, both? Where are you thinking about? Where are you expressing that?
So Dan, let's go first off during the construction phase. We're looking at major interruptions for probably a year to 3 years, particularly along the corridor in downtown Robbinsdale. We've got a pretty tight bottleneck there. I'm still wondering how we're going to add 30 feet to the middle of Highway 81, but I know that's going to come eventually. Number 2, the businesses around 40th, 41st, and 42nd. There's going to be some major interruptions to the point where people are going to be going out of businesses. And I know there's proposed road closings that have been discussed. So I think that's, I'm probably asking a little bit of both, Dan.
Sure. Well, certainly, part of what we'll have to do when we analyze any of these route options will be, to understand what the end result picture will be. And so that gets around the topic of where are there permanent impacts, intersections that stay open, intersections that may close, turn lanes that may change. And so that part will have to be analyzed and understood as we go forward and make those decisions. The construction piece gets a little bit more difficult because the length of time of construction, a lot has to do with what are the impacts to utilities, how much work has to be done, are we reconstructing the street, are we not reconstructing the street, are we building it? And so for temporary impacts, looking at different ways to move traffic around, keep businesses open, those kind of things is a huge undertaking in and of itself. In other words, when I compare the two, I'll go back to what Central Corridor was. Early on, as we moved through along University Avenue, we knew what the long-term impact would be. Which intersections would have traffic signals, which intersections would stay open. We knew we were building LRT down the center. We knew kind of how it was going to operate. It wasn't until we were much further down the path when we started to really dig deep into how are we going to build it. And then the how are we going to build it led to where do we put temporary access points? How do we get people in and out of building doorways? How do we get people in and out of building driveways and some of those kind of things? So I would say that will be a lot less known initially than, kind of coming to an understanding of what does the bigger picture look like in terms of the end result. But again, it's important for us to know what the key concerns are of the business community and the residential community. A lot of those are pretty typical. Businesses want to know, how am I going to get people in the door? How am I going to get people there, in and out of my driveway? Will there be places to park? Are contractors going to park in my parking lot? All that kind of stuff. And that's a continuous ongoing effort in a major capital project like this. We won't know everything about that in this calendar year, but we'll know where the concerns are and how we're going to at least, at the initial level, address those pieces as we move forward.
All right, that answers my question. The main thrust had more to do with permanent road closures, but I'm happy to wait till the next phase, the next discussion here in the next months to listen for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Alex, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question about, I know you had talked a little bit about like the grade and running it at grade and in the center of the right-of-way. Particularly for the West Broadway route, was a subway considered? Is it being considered? Because like a cut and cover, because I think at least as an idea, like that would allow the opportunity to reconstruct the street on top of it in a way that would really bring all the amenities that community members could be looking for, and still have faster, more reliable transit running underneath it. And I know it's more expensive, but I'm curious to hear if that's in the calculus.
Well, if I could speak on that, Alex, there's an infrastructure underneath that may prevent a subway going through there, or something like a tunnel, which is all the plumbing, sewer, electrical, fiber, and so on. And then there's the grade, and then on top of that is the actual land itself, whether it can support something like that below and above.
Thanks, Gene. That does kind of hit on it. There is, when you start stripping away pavement and moving dirt, there's a lot underneath the road, a lot of infrastructure there. So we have some pictures of like Central Corridor where we're working in downtown St. Paul, and it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. There's so much stuff underneath there, and it's at varying levels, from 5 feet below the surface to 20 feet below the surface, and you're trying to weed through those, and some of it's sewer or stormwater that's flowing at gravity, so you need to maintain the flow there, so you can't just split it up and move things around that easy. But I guess I'd say right now we're considering a lot of options. There's nothing that's off the table right now. Everything's open for discussion, but we also want to kind of temper a little bit that we want to work. We don't want to price ourselves out of a project either, and so we'll be moving forward that direction. And we have to take a look too that sometimes an option that seems like it's a reasonable option that kind of cleans things up, maybe takes something away from the community a little bit. So I guess my example would be we do like at grade center. We like at grade light rail. Center running seems to work best with traffic because we can control traffic better that way, and it seems to be more accessible to folks. Where if you're like Chicago and you start putting things up in on platforms and stuff, it's a lot harder to get to those stations and becomes less inviting than being able to walk across the street and get to the platform pretty quickly. So those are all things that we'll have to weigh out as we're moving forward. But we're considering everything that's available to us out there right now. And we're
I just feel like since we haven't done the community engagement around what they feel is accessible and all of those things, it's just difficult for me to sit here and continue to listen to things that are making assumptions about how community is going to feel when they haven't been engaged.
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, that's what we're rolling out to get some to get that input and see where the community is at and what the community could support at this point. I mean, we're given some options because a lot of folks said, "Hey, you need to give us something to react to and comment on it," and that's how we're trying to roll out the conversation to say, this is what seems to be options that stand out to us, but what else does the community want to see, and that's where we're trying to get feedback and input and comments.
And I would add to that answer, and Felicia's follow-up with that was, especially in the chat, is when we answer, we are speaking from kind of the Metro Transit perspective, kind of where our agency falls back versus what we've heard from the community. And so sometimes when we say that, that's really what we do, what we kind of mean. And some of the background on a little bit of that is, if you start either putting the station underground or above, you need to make it accessible for people that have different mobility needs. And so if you say, for example, you have an elevator and you can only fit one elevator and it breaks, and all of a sudden your station's inaccessible to somebody that's depending on it, and it takes us maybe a day to go and fix it or whatever it is. And so that's some of what we're saying. What the basis of when Metro Transit says we like certain operational things. Some of it has to do with our existing system, where we see needs and challenges and what we've had a hard time maintaining versus not. So that's some of it, but obviously we have to get more into the conversation. And like Nick said, nothing's necessarily off the table at this point.
Hey, Nick, I have a general question for you, Nick. And
could I respond to that?
Go ahead.
Really quickly. Thank you, Gene. To echo Felicia's point, I do think that it would be helpful to like have the price and the trade-offs like on the table, so that we can clearly bring that to community and have them decide, is this an investment that's worth making? We live in a very cold climate, and there's benefits for not having to stand outside to wait for the train. And, and that, I don't know, that I think that we need to make it, to Felicia's point, we need to give people the options. And I think I would really appreciate seeing the cost estimate and the trade-offs for those options.
And if I could just make, Gene, you're up next. If I could just make one more comment, I think that's really helpful information, Sophia, just around, I feel like a lot of the feedback that I'm seeing on social media and other people that are talking about this, it doesn't feel like the community, even though we're saying we want community involvement, it doesn't feel like we're asking. It sounds like, here's what it's going to be. What do you think about that? And so I think there is, and that just happened in this group that is already knowledgeable. So I think it just goes to show we need to, I don't know if it's like a different way of presenting it. And, Peggy Sue made a comment, but there is like a balance of how much of this is us asking, which I think right now is all of it, versus a lot of people feel like this is the decision, and then just what's your opinion on that decision. So thanks everyone that was involved in that question. And Gene, you're up next.
Hey, Nick, I have a question for you. And again, I don't think you can answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, okay? All right. I understand straight line. I get it, okay? There's a lot of people don't understand it, but it really is the best way. So here's my question. If it goes down Broadway in the long term, do you think that will facilitate business growth and community growth if it goes through Broadway before it hits Robbinsdale?
I guess, that's the intent of a project like this is that we want to work with the community and it should promote development, and help promote the community. We don't want to put something in there that impacts it and it cuts off that business or growth. So I believe that as we work together with the community works with the project that we can have a plan that helps growth, that's sustainable and compatible with the community that surrounds it. Yes. To say it's the same as, will things look exactly the same as they are out there right now? It'll be different. There'll be a train in there, and with putting a train down West Broadway, that there's going to be some give and take. And what is that give and take? Are traffic lanes, or do we squeeze things in more? Things like that. But if we have impacts, we also know we need to mitigate for those, or address that, so if there's traffic running down the street and we're getting rid of lanes, well, then how are we going to take care of that traffic?
Adam, I think you're up next with your hand raised.
Hey, thanks everybody for all your answers and good questions. The main thing I wanted to hit on is I kind of agree with Alex's question when it comes to if we are going to choose the Broadway or the Lowry, how heavy of an impact is this going to be to the speedier bus routes the Metro Transit keeps putting in? If they're going to run perpendicular to the route, they're going to have to wait for the lights and the train to travel through it. And we all know if you drive down on the 55 on the south side of town to cross that Hiawatha train, it's a nightmare. I mean, you wait at the lights forever and ever and ever, and even when they do come, you might see 2 cars go through. And are we worried that the bus impacts are going to be heavy? And the other half of it is, I think historically, civil projects have not done a great job at not dividing neighborhoods. And you're going to either route option, if you chose Lowry or Broadway, are you creating a divide in a neighborhood that's already hurting on multiple levels? And you're going to essentially create a bigger divide north and south side of the track if you do it at grade. I know that's the most economical way and that's the preferred way, but is that really serving the community that we keep saying we're interested in serving? So that's just my 2 cents and question for you guys. I don't know who can answer that. But.
Dan, you want to take this or you want me to go?
I know that was heavy. Sorry.
No, I think traffic-wise, I think a better example to look at would be Central Corridor. It would probably be a little bit more compatible with what at least I envision, and with upgrades to signals and systems and how they operate. I think it can work, and I'm not worried about severely impacting bus operations and train operations. I think we can get that to work together as a system. As far as breaking up the community, I think as we run it through there, we can do things like add mid-block crossings to make it safer and easier for people to cross through. The stations become a destination to go to, but also to come from, so that kind of starts spreading folks out. And I guess anecdotally too, I working on Central Corridor with Dan, when we started that project, the sidewalks and the streets really weren't that activated. But if you go down there and this year is a bad year, but 2019, there's a lot of folks in that community walking around down there. There's more people on the sidewalks. So I would put that as being more people maybe going into businesses and using them, and businesses had been growing pre-COVID. So Dan.
Well, Adam, you bring up two really good points. I know one of the things we worried about a lot when we added Green Line into downtown Minneapolis was now you had Green Line trains and Blue Line trains running east-west down 5th Street, crossing 2nd and Marquette, which were the 2 heaviest bus routes in downtown Minneapolis. So the city did a lot of work around how to move that along. And so we learn all the time. How Hiawatha operates from a traffic standpoint is different than how Central Corridor operates, and we've learned a lot there. And so keeping east-west and north-south traffic, or traffic that goes with the train and crosses the train, are important pieces. The dividing the community one is a huge issue, and it's really important. It was a piece that when we first started on Central Corridor, the idea was, from a safety standpoint, that there was going to be a fence, probably 6 to 8 feet tall, down the center of the tracks along all of University Avenue. And that was simply just met with a hell no. We are not going to divide 1/2 mile from the Rondo neighborhood, the University Avenue east-west piece with the fence down the middle. Now we came up with this.
Dan, speak at your speaker. Speak at your speaker.
We came up with this mitigated plan, which is to have that bollard and kind of kind of
Shane.
swing the chain piece down that, oh, maybe good, and some people may find that divisive, some may not. I mean, that's a good question. Building an LRT line down the middle of a street is a change. Does it divide the community? The hope is that it's designed with the proper elements in place, that it doesn't do that, that it still provides adequate way for people to get to and from and across it, and to interact with it. And so that'll be part of the challenge, because we cannot end up with an end result where building LRT results in more divisiveness for the community than when it started.
I think Kenya was trying to raise her hand.
Yeah. So let's have, well, Kenya, do you want to go since you've been trying, I don't know how long, so we'll just get you in there.
No, I'm good with the folks after me or in front. That's fine, because some folks been waiting longer than me. So
you go ahead, Kenya.
So I agree with some of what I heard in terms of kind of this pre-definition or diagnosis of what is. But I'm also interested in knowing, how have you assessed the economic opportunities? I'll tell you, as someone who's lived north for 35 years and own a business on West Broadway and pursuing commercial development on West Broadway, I know quite a few people who are interested and excited about the opportunities that the light rail could bring. And we've endured a lot already over the years of disinvestment. So, and COVID. So of course, we want to be thoughtful about the impact and what the mitigation looks like to supporting us through the process, but I wouldn't rule us out on the basis of that alone. So how have you assessed what the real opportunities are in terms of the number of jobs that will be created, the number of, just opportunities from housing to infrastructure, everything's needed there. So, and we're an existing structure. And I don't want to be competing with Upper Harbor Terminal. We need both to exist in our community, but we are also on Broadway. We've been there a lot longer. So this is serving an existing base of folks who are very much more transit dependent, and a larger corridor that is directly also aligned with North Memorial and the route. To repeat the question part of it, that's helpful. How have you assessed the economic opportunities, benefits, impacts that would be gained for West Broadway, even Laurie, more so than what could go wrong, what could go right? I want to hear more about that, the benefits.
So that's also work that we need to kind of do, and it's probably multiple parts, and others can kind of pull in here, but in terms of kind of weighing the two options, and I think there was a comment in chat too, like, could you do both? And I think we would be aiming to get to one option. The part of how we evaluate the routes will be looking at some of those possibilities, but then also kind of going, whatever is chosen, there will need to be work to really kind of even elevate that further. I don't know
Sophia,
if that helps.
I think I would add, Kenya, that's certainly part of, there's a lot of things that go into, does an LRT line make sense along B, along which one? How many rides it can, what kind of ridership it can generate, what destination it serves. And part of what we'll want to understand with these routes is, where are the economic development opportunities? Where are the the abilities, and part of that is partly related to station area planning as well. A lot of station area planning was done on the previous alignment and not done on West Broadway. And so as we move forward, part of what we'll need to do is, you know, begin to look at where might we put stations and where are those economic developments, what kind of, and I think actually result in quantifying some of those things, like you mentioned, that were really good. Where do we have an ability to generate jobs? We have an ability to generate housing units in the neighborhoods directly adjacent to either the Lowry Route and West Broadway, and how do they compare against each other? That will be important work to do as we go forward. And that's as equal to and as important as, does it fit in the street, or should it be elevated 5th grade or in a tunnel? Will be also, where are the economic opportunities and community in each of those situations?
And thank you for that. And just to quickly say that why I'm saying that too is because the narrative is important, right? And we want to also not just scare people, you know, with all the risk, but we want to also educate and excite people about the opportunities. We need more hope. We need more of that. And so that has to be front and center part of the narrative. As you know, you've been in this transportation world for a long time, as I have as well. And that is a typical approach that, you know, really just wears us down. So I want to really also balance that with the upside of things and talk about that. So where we need to do work, let's do that so that we have a different narrative and not this risk scare factor that says, no, it's not for us. We, you know, oh my gosh, you're gonna, you know, no, we're not paranoid in that way. We're excited and ready to meet the challenges and opportunities equally, you know, with this project. So let's talk about it from that balanced standpoint. It'll be very helpful to us.
And so Kenya, thank you for that, because sometimes we are explaining the impact so much that we forget that we want to, as a public agencies, make this investment so that we can bring the benefits that can come with this to the community. And yes, there are always impacts and always risks, but we have to focus as well on the good things that this can provide, because that's the reason we're doing it, is to get the community built up and provide public investment that does that.
Kenya, if I could just maybe add to that, one of the to-do tasks that we do want to bring in front of the CAC and BAC is talk about what we have learned on Blue Line and what we have learned on Green Line, right? Like, we've got 2 light rail lines that have opened up in 2004 and 2014. We should be able to tell a bit of that narrative. And then what have other communities done around the nation, and bring some of that intel, because we want to take those best practices. So I just wanted to share that as something that staff does have as a to-do list to bring forward as a conversation to both CAC and BAC.
Great. Ryan has a question.
Hi, I just wanted to say I do really appreciate the cultural and logistical concerns that Adam and Kenya brought forth. My question is a little bit more just logistical, and that is, when we're on County Road 81, which is different than a lot of the routes that the light rail in Minnesota has been on before, in the sense that it's almost a freeway in certain spaces where it's a, you know, 55 mile per hour road. When you are going down the center of that, I'm just have a question probably for Dan, and that is, are we talking about altering the traffic flow of 81 in the sense of where people can cross the road as pedestrians, or as you know, to stations that are in possibly the middle of the road now instead of being on the west side? Or are those more discussions of pedestrian bridges or pedestrian underpasses where the road, even though may get narrower in spots, would still have somewhat of an uninterrupted flow versus like University Avenue where it is full, walk across the street kind of thing.
I think the answer, Brian, to your question is yes to all of it, right? Because what 81 looks like by 694 and 63rd in Crystal versus what 81 looks like at 42nd Street in Robbinsdale versus what West Broadway looks like at Emerson and Fremont in North Minneapolis are three very different things. Same roadway. I mean, if I was in a vehicle, I could drive that entire route on that same road, but I'd be experiencing a different, environment around me. So what we might do around 63rd and Bass Lake Road in terms of pedestrian access and where the station goes and pedestrian bridges or an underpass or might be a lot different than what we might do in Robbinsdale or around North Memorial Hospital and how many lanes there are and how pedestrian access station areas versus what we might do on a Lowry or a West Broadway in North Minneapolis in a much tighter area with the businesses up closer to the street and slower speeds and much more pedestrian walking that takes place. So it'll be a mix of each of those depending on where we are along the alignment and how it fits.
Okay, great. I just, was curious. I assume that the goal is to maintain, traffic flow at existing levels where possible, but obviously this, changes, especially when you get into the more dense areas.
That's correct. And so, for example, again, north of Highway 100, County Road 81 is a 6-lane road. So we're saying, can we keep the same traffic levels without making it 6 lanes, taking it down to 4? And when you get to Robbinsdale, it's a 4-lane road. And so making it a 2-lane is probably not an option there because of the amount of traffic and access points. And so how do we then fit it in? And so along each of the areas, the idea is keep vehicular traffic moving, get pedestrians safely to and from, provide LRT stations that are safe, and be able to provide those opportunities in the community as it changes along the route.
Is there, just one other question, is there, I don't know if it's in budget or if it's even a feasibility issue, where when you get into an area that is higher density like Robbinsdale, where there's only 4 lanes of traffic, if that's the sort of thing where the train could be elevated in the middle of that road with, I don't know if the station's even off to the side and you walk up to the train, what kind of budget is there for elevation in those kind of areas?
So let me just see if I can maybe spend a couple of minutes about the topic of budget. With the previous project, the previous alignment, we started down a path and started to create a project that then we started to cost out and determine, were we at a budget level of delivering the project? The budget on the previous project, the project budget was $1.536 billion. And the determination was that the budget was able to, the set budget at 1.536 billion was able to support the construction of an alignment and an LRT project that provided the benefits that were established for that route. We're back kind of at square one, where the budget will be actually set at such time that we can, identify the general consensus of, this is the project that we want to build. We will then run through some models to determine ridership forecasts and benefits, and kind of do this cost benefit analysis that'll then allow us to say, yes, we can support that budget. So I thought I saw it earlier in the chat. Yes, it's too early to say anything right now is out of a budget because there is no budget established. So sure, this whole thing could be, the reason New York can build a subway system underground for whatever, $1 billion a mile is because they generate, 167,000 rides a day or some dang thing like that. So it's all about, the project will support a budget that'll provide the benefits associated. And those questions will be answered by those eventual determinations will be answered by the funders, federal government, the county board, Met Council, the folks that pull that together. So I don't want to get too hung up right now on is it or is it not in the budget. I think what we want to get hung up on is, are we delivering a project that provides a proper amount of benefits that offset the impacts to the communities that we're building it in? And if that's the case, we'll get to work rolling up our sleeves to find a way to deliver that economically.
And this is going a little bit left, but just want to pick up this thread of the question as well, which is around traffic and kind of the traffic calming and congestion reduction and all that kind of stuff. And with the LRT, I think we do look for ways to improve pedestrian safety, improve connections to stations, calm traffic to make safer environments. And it's that magical point of kind of doing that as much as possible while also making sure that you don't kind of like break the existing infrastructure in a sense, so that like cars are diverting or doing crazy things or running over pedestrians because they're waiting too long. So that's something that we really also will need to dive into a lot more.
We have about 20 minutes left. There's a handful of people that have their hand raised. If you haven't opened up the chat in the bottom right, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of great discussion going on there. And if you aren't comfortable asking a question in front of everyone, it sounds like we're going to keep track of what questions are there and maybe follow up on those if we don't get to them in this conversation, in a follow-up email or a subsequent conversation. So I'm going to go to H. Ellis. Beck.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I unmuted myself already. Okay. Thank you again, everyone. A lot of my questions were just kind of answered in that really nice discussion we had about kind of surrounding infrastructure. But that is something that it's come back to, or I've come back to as I speak with people about, I talk to people, say, hey, go to this website, tell them what you think, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people come back to me and they say, well, what's it going to be like? Because if we're talking about rebuilding Broadway, like we've seen with like the Hennepin plan in South Minneapolis, things of that nature, if we're talking about fully rebuilding Broadway, sure, it'd be a pain, but it might be something that's like way more sustainable and beneficial way down the line if we're talking about like a robust rebuild. But if we're talking about pigeonholing something that doesn't fit into Broadway, then it'll be a disaster, and they'd rather have it go down Lowry. Simply put. So is there like this is such a probably unanswerable question, but it's what I keep hearing from people when I bring it up to them. Is there like a baseline minimum of surrounding infrastructure we can expect when we tell people like, hey, here are the route options? Because yeah, I mean, putting a train down Broadway and having narrower sidewalks and cars whizzing by at 40 miles an hour when they can, because they've been waiting at a light and they got to beat the next one now, that's probably not going to work for Broadway. But putting in wider sidewalks, calming traffic, things of that nature, that's going to, that is going to be something that's probably going to work for people in that area. So, and that's just an example. I don't mean to speak for anyone, that's just, pulling off the top shelf there. But is there like a expectation of surrounding improvements or adaptations we can expect?
A lot of folks are muting. But I do think a reasonable expectation is looking at how it all works together, right? Like we would not place an LRT and just be like, ah, right? It is, you know, in our previous project, and this is kind of maybe a way to kind of see kind of what we've done. Our previous design roll plots are online, and they show kind of about the curb to curb redesign of places like West Broadway and Brooklyn Park or Olson Memorial, or even how people would connect to stations along the rail corridor. So it is kind of that, you know, footprint in a sense of making it all work well together. Because from a Metro Transit perspective alone, we want people to get to our stations. And to get there, you're coming in multiple ways, and we want to make it easy and to feel nice. You know, I ride transit a lot, right? And you want to ride more when you're getting to to that station. Feels nice.
Yeah, I mean, Ellis, I think maybe this hopefully answers your question. From a system, I mean, from a construction standpoint, with street running LRT, you cannot build it without essentially determining what is the final end product from right away to right away. With utilities are going to have to move, meaning curbs are going to have to move, meaning sidewalks are going to have to move. And of course, we all know that on routes, especially like at Broadway, in North Minneapolis, oftentimes the right of way to the right of way is also the building to the building, right? There's zero setback lines. And so that's essentially what University Avenue was, is we reconstructed the entire thing from right of way to right of way. Now the question becomes, what goes back in, right? What goes back in? Because assuming you don't want to put, you know, if you want to put everything anybody ever would want, I want 2 lanes, I want sidewalks, I want wide median, I want landscaping, I want bike trails. Well, maybe there isn't enough room. So part of the community discussion will be what makes sense to go back in, because the assumption will be that we will reconstruct from right of way to right of way line on those routes. And then, you know, so some of the big discussion points will be, what about parking? What about side street access versus, you know, parking right in front of businesses? There's a huge issue on University Avenue. What about wider sidewalks? And how narrow of a travel lane can we get by with? Where do we need left turn lanes in order to support access to businesses and residential areas? And so that whole discussion, a lot about what our work will be as we look deeply into these groups.
And you mentioned there was a place where I could find previous right-of-way to right-of-way plans. I think that'd be helpful to.
I'll put it in chat right now.
Thank you. And thank you for.
Catherine, see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about, I'm moving to the warehouse district, and I don't see the representation about Washington Avenue. And from discussions I've had preliminarily with folks, I don't think they're going to be too happy about your proposed Washington Avenue route. I just want to know who's engaged that portion of the community, and if they're going to be represented on this group.
That probably was a question for me, but I was typing, so I didn't fully hear it. But I think that, Catherine, let me rephrase. You were asking about specifically engaging kind of North Loop, and then the kind of as you go north, the Washington Avenue folks. Kind of the, is that?
Yeah, you have it. I didn't care about them before, but since I'm moving over there.
I'm still trying to get over this. Catherine Fleming's going to become a North Looper.
So have you talked to anyone there, or?
So, along the Washington route, and even I think if we were going to West Broadway and taking some of those connection pieces, there's parts of the North Loop that would have various impacts that we have to kind of drill down to and talk to. So I'd say that those are, communities that we do need to have more discussions with. And as we kind of get into these plans, we want to talk to all the property owners that are along these routes, as well as just general any, and not just property owners, but the businesses that occupy spaces and whatnot. So we definitely need to get deeper into those discussions. I think it's very preliminarily right now. We do engage kind of the city as well in these discussions, and we didn't necessarily target specific for example, in this committee, we let the city kind of target overall areas, and there will be a question for the community cohort as well. As we engage in Area 3, what are some of the efforts that we can do to specifically reach that portion of the alignment?
I don't know how you pick Washington Avenue without talking to them.
It kind of gets back to it was, when you're trying to reach potential destinations and where you would get ridership, it's also kind of what would be an option to get there. And so that's kind of how that part of how that got on the table for further discussion. I don't know if that, Dan, did you want to add?
I mean, Catherine's right. The North Loop has been underrepresented in our work date and hasn't been I will be straightforward, hasn't been a strong outreach piece for us. Now, knowing that Catherine Fleming and Kenya are now living in North Loop, maybe that's going to be
no, you should have reached out to them before.
But it's an important piece, Catherine, and we did meet with Councilmember Fletcher. We talked a little bit about it with him, and we need to get more engaged, I believe, with what's going on part of the orange route that's there on the map that isn't just Lowry or West Broadway.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
There is a comment about the North Loop Neighborhood Association getting involved, so there's that piece. I'm going to go back to Peggy Sue, has had her hand raised and waited for other people who hadn't asked a question yet. So Peggy Sue, you're up.
Great. Thank you for that, Jason. And sorry to take up so much space, but I guess I just had a question kind of about process, I guess, because I do think it might help some of the conversation we're having here. Is I know that in like a federal process, a lot of times we're identifying routes just so we can have an alternative, right? Like there's the preference and then you have to identify the alternative, especially like in the NEPA process. And so I think one thing that I'm curious about is just looking at the two routes in North Minneapolis, in addition to all the kind of lots of routes to get into target fields. I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about, how much of that process is driven by like actually being really interested in one route versus the other, or is it just to have two routes? Because I feel like that's a lot of energy to be expending, like especially if there's a lot of drive to have a West Broadway route. So I'm not sure if maybe this is a question for Nick of just, what's the rationale between the two routes, or is it just truly, because I feel like we don't have that anywhere else in the corridor. So just trying to get a sense of why that is happening in that way.
I think a good example is if you look at the middle section, there really wasn't a lot of opportunities. So we're proposing 81. Similar here when we get to North Minneapolis, it gets down to available right of way and continuous through routes, and really Lowry and West Broadway are the ones that stand out with enough right of way, and they're fairly continuous going through that North Minneapolis area. And there really isn't a lot of other options as you look at Plymouth or 26th, or if you get up to Dowling, they're all very limited in right away, and they're very residential. So that's why, as a project staff, we didn't bring those forward. You know, I would like to have a few more options to discuss, and that, I guess that's kind of where we're calling out to the community, saying that this is what we're seeing, or what are we missing here, or is there something else that's coming out of the community that you're seeing that you'd like us to explore? You know, we didn't propose Penn Avenue or Emerson or Fremont because there already is existing transit on there. So, you know, and they're limited in right of way. So that's really what it is to it. That those are the two apparent options to us.
And to dive into kind of I think how the first part you framed the question, we're not bringing any of these forward just to have another option. We're bringing these forward because you know, our kind of analysis that Nick kind of walked through. We think that these are all potentially good options. You know, some, for example, in some of the early feedback, you know, you hear a lot about West Broadway, but then when you start to kind of talk with more kind of like Ward 4 and whatnot, you know, Lowry's not on there just to be on there. It's a option that we want to see, you know, developed and talked about. And then when it comes to the spaghetti soup kind of in the bottom, a little bit of that, you know, we did have a discussion on the project team, is like, well, do you want to place something there and get people worried about, you know, potential impact if it's not, you know, so it's really the engineers trying to look at that complex area and thinking about what might work the best, both in terms of literally engineering, but then also reaching various destinations and exploring potential. So I would say nothing's on the table just because. It is on the table because we think it's a good, in our initial guess, is a solution.
Yeah, I didn't mean for that to seem like accusatorial that like one option is on just to be on. I think it's just like, it's a lot of energy to expend to sift through this, even more so on your part than ours. But it would just be helpful. One other thing that I would say, just like kind of in this process, is that, you know, I don't feel like the rollout necessarily has indicated that there's like a lot of conversation, or it feels very much like there's not other options than this. So I'm not sure how we can communicate that better, of like that we want, because it sort of feels like, here are all the things we said no to, what do you think about these two that we said yes to? So I'm just wondering if there's a better way that we can talk about that process with people.
Peggy, so this is Sam, and if I could just respond to that, Jason, I think that's exactly it, right? And this is exactly the feedback that we're needing. We're early enough in this process where we can modify that message and making sure it's resonating with community members. And we heard that theme. Peggy Sue, I think you're hitting on a couple of themes that we're hearing. So for takeaways for the team is to begin to, how can we resonate with that message to say, here's some options. Let us know if you have more, bring that intel, bring that passion, bring that energy into the process. It also sounds like additional data would be helpful and in getting this back out to community members and beginning to talk a little bit about what the overall process is. Peggy Sue, I also heard in your question is like sort of what's that next step, and particularly like how do we handle route evaluation in the environmental process, and being very clear about that as well. Ideally, we would love to have a route that makes sense for community, that is community supported, that moves forward in the process. But what I'm hearing is that we might need to detail that out. So I appreciate this, and we're watching the chat too. And Catherine, I love that you mentioned that there should be more people in this conversation. Let us know who those folks are so we have that time to reach out and make sure folks are engaged and connected on this.
So Gene has his hand raised, so I know we're coming up against time here, so I think this might be the last question. But if you do have a question that you want to ask that you didn't get a chance to ask, type it in the chat and we'll make sure that gets addressed.
I'm shy when I don't talk much. I have a question either for Dan or whoever. Specifically about Robbinsdale. You talked about station area planning. Is it too soon, Dan, to get some feedback of how that would fit considering the narrow space that we have in Robbinsdale?
No. No, it's not too soon.
Okay. So can you tell me more?
Well, so we've done, we had done on the previous alignment, the determination that there was going to be a station in Robbinsdale, and that station was on the BNSF tracks south of 42nd. As we look at the alignment now, the general consensus is there likely ought to be a station in downtown Robbinsdale, and there ought to be a station in, around, and near North Memorial Hospital.
Yes.
Where exactly, how it's positioned, where's the optimum spot, both to serve riders and to serve potential future development, all that discussion can be started now.
Okay, so my question is, because it's a narrow right-of-way, how is that going to happen? I mean, it's pretty narrow going down Robbinsdale.
It is, and so part of it can be about, part of it can be how it's configured, right? Stations on University Avenue are split platforms on either side of, say, Snelling or Lexington. That allows left turn lanes and stations in the shadow of each other. That saves a little bit of width. Otherwise, center platform takes up more room. What if we came to the side instead of going down the center? We came to the side and then built this. I mean, so that's all part of, but not only where, how it all fits, and are there opportunities to build it in existing right of way and potentially acquire additional right of way that don't have significant impact. So that's an example of the kind of work that can be done, in Robbinsdale, but in other spots along the alignment.
Okay, thank you.
Well, just want to acknowledge that we're at 8 o'clock. There's still a lot of energy here. So I think the project team is willing to stay on a little bit longer if needed, but don't want to hold the committee hostage to that time. So Jason, Alicia, other chairs.
I can stay for a little bit longer if other people want to stay. I guess I would say more, let's continue the conversation. If you need to leave, then I think now's a good time to take a second, thank everyone for being here. And we really appreciate the conversations and everyone being involved. Are there other questions that we need to discuss? There's lots, I'm sure. I guess one question I had, Sophia, just around, I know that there's a there's a Facebook page now, and there's the Twitter feed and everything, and so there is activity in social media. But is there like a specific social media manager that can engage in some of our community Facebook groups and join those groups and see some of that feedback directly, as opposed to, or is that? I guess that's my question. Is there someone that's specific working on the social media aspect of this that we can engage in these different community groups?
We have 2 staff members that help with our social media. And depending on what you're thinking, I guess the answer could vary. But what we can, Jason, maybe to clarify, are you looking for to kind of get social media content, or more like as a discussion is happening somewhere for them to see it?
Yeah, I feel like, I'm a resident of Robbinsdale, and I'm involved in all these different groups that are on Facebook, and there's lots of great discussion happening, but I think there would be much more it would feel much more transparent if there was someone that was representing Metro Transit or this project that said, here's our response to this. This is what we're thinking about. This is, whatever it is. I think it's like, yeah, having more social media content to share and to make available will help build exposure. But I think there's also a transparency piece of being engaged in these groups.
Let's maybe talk about that a little bit more. There's, I would say I'm happy to kind of jump in on social media places to kind of further conversations. I don't always see everything, so we can dive into that a little bit. We have two communications people too that kind of help us with that world. We do collect things like Twitter are easier to collect things about the project, where Facebook is much more difficult to do so because you can't Facebook has a lot of problems of just like pulling stuff, so you almost have to go and know where to engage. And then things like Nextdoor, it's a world that we want to expand into, but kind of have limited access as not being like a resident. So there's kind of different applications and ways to kind of deal with it. So we can maybe kind of take that a little further. Go ahead, Kenya.
You're exploring apps. Are you using Snapchat? What's the new one?
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse
is the new one.
They're the biggest users of that. Baby boomers use Facebook more than anyone. So I mean, just kind of looking at that. I use Clubhouse now, but
yeah, no, all really good feedback, and I think this is part of why the county was able to leverage and have the community engagement cohort that brings a bunch of organizations together that can do a lot of that, like specifically target youth or different demographics, and we need to kind of overlap on this in the group as well, and we need to get into that in addition to kind of project staff work.
Just if I could add to that, it just makes more sense for us, Kenny, to be supporting those existing networks that folks are using today by adding them. You guys all know we're government and we can be like so slow, and the fact that we even got a Facebook channel, limiting the paperwork, right? Like, I get it. So it's best that we are working existing networks that are far more nimble, that can really respond, and then probably more importantly are already tapping an existing audience, and that's where we're looking to really support with the work with the collaborative group that's coming together.
Great, thank you, because I know we tend to focus on youth a lot. I can't claim that title too much anymore in my 40s now, but I do plan on being around, little, 30, 40, 50 more years, and so I don't want to be excluded because I'm not 20 or 30 something either. So just want to throw that out there in terms of who these folks are you're bringing to the table to engage in around community.
Yeah, and we need to continue to pull metrics too. Like, we do ask for like demographic data on like the survey. It's not available on the map, and but you can start to see where you might be missing some zip codes, or we initially we hear a lot more from white men. That's not how we want to close out efforts. So it's kind of that. I think somebody asked about a data-driven approach. We also have to make sure that we're doing that on that end, the community engagement end. Okay, well, I see folks dropping off a little bit, and it is past. We some takeaways from the meeting, and feel free to take it away from me. But we committed to kind of saving the chat. If questions didn't get addressed as we kind of went through it, to kind of include that in the next meeting packet, as I want to say they're answers, right? But there's responding to some of it, and kind of the chairs can use that also to identify future topics that we want to come back to in our next meetings. Any closing comments from Dan, Sam, our chairs?
I would just say thank you. Sorry, Dan. I would just say thank you. This has been so good for us to hear your concerns and the issues raised and helping us be better. We're not going to get it completely right 100% of the time, so this is just making us better, and just appreciate that. And I would say that our commitment should be to actually take the chat and get those answers out to you as quickly as we can, and maybe not even wait for the next meeting, because they are a little bit about process and then how folks can continue to engage. So thanks again for your time tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of the chat, and I like the idea of people being able to put both comments and questions in there, because it just helps, bring it all together. So, and thanks for the time. I mean, this will be step one in many steps, and we're moving along. So, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you, everybody.
Liz, I'm grabbing the chat quick.
I was going to say, I have been copying it the whole time, so.
Okay,
should have
I
it, but-
assumed you did. I will just grab it to just